So I've mentioned a few ancestral wounds that can inhibit animistic practice, but now I'd like to talk a little bit about healing some of those wounds and what that can look like in certain animistic practices. So the simplest way to heal your ancestral wounds is to make offerings to your ancestors, especially to the healthy ones. And sometimes this is an intuitive process. Sometimes it's a known ancestor, one that you knew that was especially powerful, especially spiritually integrated, that can be sort of called on. And in some cultures, this has to be done like there are certain rules about like who can be called on and who it would be better not to call on. And so some of the times there's ideas that I've mentioned in some of my other videos about ancestral, working with the ancestors, about something that Daniel 4 talks about, which is the difference between well ancestors and ghosts. And that there's an idea that some ancestors evolve and cross over fully into the land of the dead and become full ancestors, fully integrated beings that can assist the living if called upon in different ways, and that others are stuck and having a hard time. So the simplest way that one of the ancestors or the dead or the ghosts can get stuck and make trouble for a person is that they're wandering around and not sort of partially possessing a person, or they have cords to a person. So this is usually done out of fear and not malice. And in some rituals, like I think Alberto Villoldo's people, they do like a little depossession ritual where they kind of work with their helping spirits to send the spirit into a better place in the afterlife, a place where they'll be more free and where they won't be stuck to a human being, and they won't be, it's not fun for them either, and it's not fun for the human being. And what this does is it liberates the person, the living person, from the patterns associated, the cyclical, unhappy patterns associated with the unwell ancestor. Another way to do this healing is to do what Daniel 4 suggests and teaches, where you recruit an ancient well ancestor who is very powerful to stand between you and the unwell ancestors, and through a series of offerings and other practices. And this can either be done by the individual, the living person themselves, or with a practitioner assisting. The entire ancestral line that has not crossed over or gone into the land of the ancestors basically becomes elevated and healed and made healthy. So that then these beings are like a direct line to the more powerful well ancestors. So that there isn't like this enormous break between the unwell ones and the well ones. And that also has the effect of interrupting the patterns that the unwell ancestors carried, and some of those patterns could be things that inhibit ancestral practice, or animistic practice. And the third way is that powerful helping spirits, deities, sometimes in some cultures, there's sort of a fine line between powerful ancestors and deities, can be recruited to help, and this would be done shamanically with the practitioner, would be recruited to basically heal the ancestors. And this may involve dialoguing with the ancestor. It may involve dialoguing with the deity or the helping spirit who's coming in to help the ancestor. But eventually that ancestor is released and able to be integrated and join the well ancestors, and the person can be free from those any connections or karmic patterns or ancestral karmic is what I'm talking about at this point. And this is done in a couple of different practices. The one I'm probably the most familiar with is from curanderismo that Erica Buenaflor teaches. But there are many other traditions that do like a similar thing. In fact, Pierce Vitebsky, the anthropologist, wrote a book where he talks about the Sora people in India who actually, the shamans actually channel the dead people, and the living get to hug and argue with and talk to the recently deceased loved one more time. And this helps to kind of like send the dead off to where they need to go while letting the living be free and unencumbered by any of the ancestral karma. So, and then the last thing I would like to mention about this is that the other thing that can happen sometimes is that these wounds happen and the ancestors are healed. The ghosts have been liberated and they've become well ancestors. But there's still like some grieving that the living individual needs to do. And this is done, Daniel Four teaches this, some other people teach this. You may use the elements like water to help, or you can ask the well ancestors once again to kind of hold space for you so that you can feel the grief. And this can actually help to release the pain of being sort of abandoned by your ancestors and needing to recover their traditions, so that you can once again, with confidence, step into working with them in a good way and reclaim our animistic traditions. So I hope that this very brief run through of ancestral healing practices just gives you an idea about the incredible variety of practices that go into releasing some of these ancestral karmic wounds so that the living can be free to practice and maintain our relationships with the other than humans and with the beloved dead.